Well, you mentioned Bruce Metzger, and I had read that he got a copy of the Revised Standard Version sent to him by a bunch of conservative theologians or pastors or whatever, but they burned it up, and so it was sent to him in burned manuscript form. And I guess that's now enshrined in some place.
I don't know. The story is that some conservatives sent Bruce Metzger a burned up version. There was no more pious man I have ever met than Bruce Metzger. He had white hair, and hello, old fellow, it was Bruce, and he would tell you a joke, and that was the joke for the day from Bruce Metzger. I had dinner at his house, and Bruce came out of the same tradition that the Pilgrims came out of. A very pious, devout man, and that people would, abuse him is just beyond belief. And I really appreciate your telling that story because it gives me a chance to say he was totally devoted. Yeah.
How do you explain his involvement with the Reader's Digest?
I was in his seminar. I was in seminar with Bruce Metzger the year he was doing the Reader's Digest condensed version of the Bible. I will also say there was another man with me in that seminar named Bart Ehrman.
Oh, yeah.
Who has made a mint. If you go to Barnes & Noble, we asked Bruce, Dr. Metzger, pardon me, and he thought he was doing a good thing. He was part of a committee with Reader's Digest to condense the Bible, like Reader's Digest used to do with condensed books. I've never really read the condensed version. He thought he was doing a decent thing, and he thought they were, yeah.
The funniest thing that I remember about that is they took out the last words about anyone who adds or detracts. That's in the Book of Revelation.
Yeah.
That's completely out.
They removed the ending of the Book of Revelation. If anyone deletes anything from this, let them. Again, you raise a very good point, and Metzger, he had rationalized this to himself. I don't want to defend him. I just say he was the finest text and version scholar of the 20th century. And I learned a lot about canon lists. What I did with Bruce Metzger was read lists of canons from the 2nd through the 6th century. Yeah.
Phil, I know that you're prepared on the King James, but right now there are so many English translations. There's the New International Version and the NRSV and Jerusalem and New English Version. Can you comment on...
Can I comment about all those translations? I have 3 minutes, and I will. The Jerusalem Bible is a Catholic English translation from original manuscripts. And it's a fine translation. It was originally done into French and then into English. If you look at the committee, J.R.R. Tolkien was part of that English translation committee. And, it's a wonderful translation. I really like the New American. If we're talking about Catholic translations, I think the New American Bible is a good translation. The most popular translation today is the New International Version, NIV. I would guess many of you own that. It's very popular with evangelicals. I think it's a fine translation, again done by a committee. The RSV was done in 1952. The NRSV came out roughly 1990. Mainline Protestants, Episcopals, Presbyterians, Lutherans read the NRSV, and I will just say the professional societies, the Society of Biblical Literature seems to use the NRSV the most often in terms of the study Bible that comes out. When people do translations, there's kind of a sliding scale between being literal and capturing the sense of something. Let me give you an example. In the Psalms it says, "Wash me and I shall be whiter than snow." When translators in equatorial Africa were presented with that problem, the problem was snow. Had they seen snow? Didn't mean anything. So one translation there is, "Wash me and I shall be whiter than an egret's feather." Is that literal? No. If you live in Israel and you can see the mountaintops, you will know what snow is. But if you're in equatorial Africa, have you ever seen snow? Do you know what an egret's feather is like? You do. So here's where you pay the price between a literal translation and the phrase is dynamic equivalence. And we do that with translation all the time. Okay, I'm going to let you into a dynamic equivalent translation I do with my classes when it comes to the letters of Paul and Romans. There's a phrase in Greek that Paul uses repeatedly in Romans, me genoito. It's the optative. You don't even know what the optative is. But, it's usually translated, God forbid. Here's how I translate it. Should I sin in order that grace may abound? Paul says, me genoito. God forbid. I translate it, hell no! Okay, that's not literal, but is it dynamic? Yeah, it got to rise from you. And this is the beauty of translations. So the best thing is to read several translations. I like the NIV. I like the NRSV. The NIV has upgraded its inclusive language, though it tends to be more literal. The NRSV tends to be, when a choice is made, dynamically equivalent. Anyway.
What translation is the hell no?
That's the Quanbeck translation, only verbalized in class. Another example, and I know you have to go, it is in Romans 1, where the Greek word doulos. Paul says, I am a doulos of Christ. You can translate it slave or servant. The NRSV has servant in the text and a footnote saying slave, as does the NIV. The New American Translation translates it slave. I respect that, because that's my choice. So I have my students read the footnotes and the alternative translation choices. King James says servant, because that's, and again in the 17th century, that meant a lot of things, and that meant something to them. So, I'm sorry, we've run over time. Thank you for your attention.